Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final episode of Ryan's Shooting Podcast that I will be putting out for this year. Please excuse the tone of my voice today, as I'm just starting to get over a little cold. Anyway, let's jump right into it. Today, we're going to talk in detail about one of the most important aspects of mental game strategy that there is when it comes to shooting, and one of the easiest things to get a grasp of. That topic, as I alluded to in the last episode that we did, which concerned evaluation of match performance, is emotions. I think this will serve as a good kind of intro to the mental game of shooting. Coming up here in January, all of the episodes are going to focus more on the major sections and details of the mental game, which will then be elaborated and expanded on throughout the rest of the episodes that come out in this show forever. Because it is so essential to competing at a high level and not just shooting a technically perfect shot. This is just an audio podcast, and we are a bit limited on what we can do. So what we can do a great job of talking about the planning, strategy, and mental game side of shooting, but we can't really go too much into depth on the technical aspect of the positions and posture and everything. For that, I'm very limited, as you can only hear my voice. And you really need to have an actual in-person coach work with you on the line one-on-one, or at the very least go out and get a book on the technical aspect of shooting. If you're looking for something like that, by the way, the go-to reference book, at least for rifle shooting, is called Ways of the Rifle, and can be bought from most shooting supply vendors. It's extremely in-depth, and will probably give you more information than is completely necessary to set up a good basic position, but it comes with photos and diagrams and is the next best thing to having an experienced in-person coach working with you on the line. Anyway, we'll get off that little tangent now, since it isn't really what this episode is about, and get back to the topic of the day, emotions. Are emotions a good thing or bad thing? Are they neither? Can you use them to your advantage, or do they always hurt you? Well, your emotions have a nuanced place in your shooting, and their impact and importance vary based on what you're doing at the time. And the biggest difference can be seen in, the difference between practice and match. So we're going to start by discussing emotions in the match environment, because that is, of course, the most critical. For pretty much everyone, any type of emotion or emotional reaction that you might have during a match is a detriment to your performance. When you are competing, in my opinion, you want to be as emotionless as possible. One of the compliments I've received about my shooting that I consider to be one of the highest I've ever gotten was, "Ryan, you're one of the most emotionless people I've ever seen on the firing line. You don't react to anything." Now, I don't know that this was really a compliment or if it was just an observation, but I consider it a compliment because eliminating emotions from my match self is something I've been working at for years. I've never found a situation where emotions have helped me in a match. If anything, I've found that they only work to distract you from the task at hand, and they result in a poorer overall performance. Shooting is ultimately about performing a repeated skill perfectly over and over again, right? So, as an analogy, let's consider a commercial airline pilot coming in to perform a landing. Let's even make it more interesting and say that the airport is extremely busy, and there's a storm, and it's at night, and there are heavy crosswinds, and there's fog, and there's some ice on the runway, and it's the guy's check ride, so if he messes anything up, he's either fired or has to go through additional training, or maybe doesn't get the promotion he was hoping to get. So that's the situation the pilot is in. If you are a passenger sitting on that airplane, do you want the pilot to be someone who is maybe allowing themselves to feel nervous about performing the landing? Or how about a pilot who is super aggressive about performing the landing and is approaching it like he's about to run out of a tunnel before kickoff of a big football game? Neither, right? You want a guy up there who's a stone cold robot who will, perform the skill perfectly with no type of emotion involved whatsoever, and it's the same with shooting. Performing the skill is primary. Competition is just a secondary consequence that doesn't require any conscious thought while you're shooting. Be concerned with where you placed after the match is done. Now, why is it that I'm telling you emotional outbursts are bad? Well, because of two things. First, it's going to mess with your repetitive mental program. Now, we're not actually going to cover this much today, as that's going to be the focus of our Conscious Mind episode coming out in January. The basic idea here is that you're supposed to go through the exact same mental process, thought process for every shot, and if you get emotional on one or two or three or four of them, you're changing your process, which is bad. It's not consistent. But more on that in a future show. The second reason is that emotional outbursts or reactions are bad. The reason is that the way you think has direct physiological consequences. Now, I'm going to try and keep this from being too sciencey, but please excuse me if I am. I was a biology major in college. Now, to illustrate this, consider that if you close your eyes and vividly imagine being chased by a pack of wolves or attacked by a bear, your heart rate is probably going to increase and your body will kind of start to go into its fight or flight mode, and you're going to release a bit of epinephrine and norepinephrine or adrenaline into your bloodstream, and your body is going to be in a bit more of a high alert stage or active mode. Alternatively, if you vividly imagine a calm lake scene with maybe an old man fishing out of a rowboat out there in the early morning with a few ducks flying over, the opposite's going to happen. Your mind will be very at ease, and so your body will follow suit. Now, finally, imagine a time when you've been extremely frustrated or angry with a sibling or a parent or somebody you know. Your brain's going to feel those emotions again, and correspondingly, your blood pressure is going to go up a little, and you're going to be more excited and less calm than you just were. There's no reason that the same thing isn't going to happen with your shooting, and it does. If you're shooting your match and are struggling a little bit, maybe you just shot a poor shot and you have a little emotional response to it, that response will not only be present in your mind, but it's also going to be reflected in your body. Your muscles might tense a little bit, your heart might beat a little faster, you're going to be just a little bit more on edge, and generally being on edge is not particularly helpful in shooting. So cut out the emotions, cut out the knee-jerk reactions to bad shots, and your body will stay more calm, and you might find yourself recovering from poor strings much better and having much better overall performances. So take a look at yourself. Are you somebody who gets angry on the line if you shoot a poor shot and maybe yanks your bolt back or swears under your breath or makes faces at your coach or looks back at the audience or whatever, something like that? If you are someone who has big emotional outbursts ever, you need to right now make the conscious decision to never have one again, or you need to quit shooting because you're just not the type of person who should be around firearms, and neither me nor any other shooter wants to practice or compete on the line with you. Your thoughts are entirely your own, so control them. If you're instinctively reacting to a shot at a particular moment, catch it and stop immediately. Try your best to reset your mind and get back to that ice-cold state. To give you some reference, where I'm at right now is that I'm catching myself if I feel my tongue start to push against the roof of my mouth a little harder than normal after a poor shot. That's what I consider an overreaction, and you should be aiming for that same expectation. In fact, I get myself in such a state of non-emotion while I'm shooting or competing that sometimes it can take me a few minutes after I stop to get back to kind of being my normal self again. Frequently after a final, for example, maybe even a final that I just won, I won't smile all that much or even seem particularly happy because for the last 20 minutes I've just been focusing on being completely non-emotional, and I can't just flip that switch right away and get back to, my normal self. Now, something you'll often hear from coaches is that nobody should ever be able to tell whether you just shot a 10 or a miss. And that's very good advice and, a pretty good way to sum up everything I've just talked about. But real quick, I want to talk about something else in there. What happens if you do shoot a miss? Or if you fire a shot in air rifle without a pellet and it counts as a 0? Or if you crossfire? All these things that are, massive point losses. In these cases, Even though you may have made sure that you had no outward emotional reaction, something like that is extremely unusual, and I would recommend stepping back from the firing line to reset your mind and everything as a way to recover. Otherwise, you still risk having your mind a little bit messed up. You don't want to shoot a miss and then have the next shot be an 8 because you didn't get off the line and reset. In fact, all these things have happened to me in competition, and I've learned from it. If you've been listening to the other episodes I've done, then you should have heard my story of expelling air without a pellet at my first international match and getting a miss for it counts as a 0. Well, the next part of that story that I didn't include before is that I remained calm and figured I could just go on. And, sure enough, my next shot, or the one after that, was an 8, which I never shoot. I never shoot 8s. So I consider that loading problem to have been a 12-point mistake, not a 10-point one. Now I always get off the line after something unusual like that happens, and I suggest you do also. Okay, so that covers emotions in a match situation, but how about practice? Well, for the most part, the things I covered so far still hold true. However, I would say that a practice situation is a more appropriate place to feel a competitive urge. The reason for this is that it's going to help you stay motivated throughout your practice, and it's going to be helpful in getting you to the range at all. In the back of your mind, if you're thinking, man, my competition is probably practicing today, I better get down there too, and get my training in. Well, that's definitely helpful, and while it maybe isn't a classical emotion like happiness, sadness, or frustration, it's still kind of in the same realm. You still don't want to have any kind of emotional outbursts or knee-jerk reactions or getting mad at yourself or anything like that. But if you can get the sweet spot of feels that gives you the motivation you need to stay focused and on task, that's just about right. In a match situation, you don't have to worry about this because it's more likely just going to happen anyway since it's a competitive atmosphere. So you're probably still best off there, just trying to eliminate as much in terms of your emotions as you can. Now, regarding all of this, there are probably a few shooters out there, maybe even a few quite successful shooters, who will disagree with some of the things I've said here. However, I think that this is one of the things that has helped me the most in my shooting and in experiencing the success I've had so far. Yeah, it's part personality. I'm, quite a naturally calm and easygoing guy, but a lot of it is still conscious effort to control my thoughts and emotions and maintain my cool head under duress. It's a trainable skill, and probably one of the easiest and fastest to learn. Your thoughts are only yours. Nobody else can control them but you, so take the reins and steer them where you want to go. Happy New Year, everyone. Talk to you in 2016.